Our main findings should be of concern to all Albertans.
Alberta has a spending problem and the solution is cuts. That's the finding of a blue ribbon panel which sent a long list of recommendations to the province which will ultimately lead to major long-term changes in the way the province pays for health care, education, and public sector employees. The report says Alberta's per capita spending is the highest in the country, adding it would be $10.4 billion less annually if the province spent the same per person as BC, Ontario, and Quebec.
While Alberta spends more, the results achieved are no better and in some cases worse than in other provinces.
When it comes to health care, the panel suggests getting spending more in line with Ontario, Quebec, and BC. It calls for annual independent reviews of spending, more publicly funded private options for day procedures, and renegotiating the agreement with the Alberta Medical Association when it comes to doctors' pay. In terms of education, the panel calls for less spending on administration and governance, a complete overhaul of the education funding formula, including incentives for better educational outcomes. At the post-secondary level, it suggests ending a tuition freeze for students, creating a revenue model that is less reliant on government grants, and it calls on the government to address the future of post-secondary institutions that do not appear viable in future funding scenarios. For the public sector, the report wants compensation brought in line with other provinces and the establishment of a legislative mandate that sets salary levels for all public sector employees, which would be the basis for back-to-work legislation. The panel also calls for a top-to-bottom review of all departments, agencies, boards, and commissions, and suggests using legislative options to achieve many of the goals, if necessary.
I think overall what surprised me was the emphasis on the long-term structural fixes and less on the short-term, how do we deal with the budget deficit in the next budget kinds of issues.
The other thing we learned this morning is that Jason Kenney lied. He said that he was going to maintain or increase funding to healthcare and education, and those things aren't true.
The report also clearly states this is a spending problem, not a revenue problem.
There is no evidence here to support the idea that Alberta is a province that should be raising taxes.
The UCP's first budget will be tabled in October. And when it comes to how much weight this report and its 26 recommendations will have while it crafts that document,
we'll be putting a lot of stock into these recommendations. There's no doubt about it.
In Calgary, Jonathan Muma, City News.